What's up, Banner? It's Jonathan here. We're going to be talking about Tesla today, and I love Tesla. Let's start with there, but I think it's a little overvalued at this time. There might be better opportunities in the future. We'll talk about when those opportunities are going to come up, and how even though if you do want to be invested today, that the price is justified. I'm not harping on anyone who wants to get invested today. I'm just saying I believe there are better options in the future, and that's why, full disclosure, I'm not currently invested, but we will see. I had some stock earlier. It's been sold since then. Sold some of it a little too soon, some of it right at the peak, and that was great. But let's take a look at different reasons about why I think there's going to be a better chance in the future for buying Tesla stock, and some of the timetables we can look at to see where they're going in the future. When are they going to get to 2.5 million cars and different things like that. So let's go into that. So the highly anticipated battery day has come and gone. All those big announcements, we're going to talk about some of those. Like, for example, Elon predicting 20 to 30%, 30 to 40% growth expected for the year 2020 and deliveries of cars. I don't think that's going to be too hard to match. That's even with the pandemic going on, so that's great. I love that in my mind. Another really exciting thing coming out is later, in about a month or so, or 2 months, we'll see how it happens, but the beta test of full self-driving is coming out. This will include intersections, this will include all the funky roundabouts, or pretty much the goal here is that we're going to be at least beta testing the idea of being able to go from your home to work without having to touch the wheel, meaning legally, absolutely, you must, and I would recommend that you do so. This is a beta test, and there's going to be all sorts of edge case scenarios where this doesn't work out. But this is really exciting that they're finally going to start getting some data on full self-driving from your work, from home to work and back, all hands-free, potentially. So that's really, really exciting that they're going to start to collect the data. If you remember before when they did this, when their highways was beta tested, it took about a year, and through the course of that year it got a lot better, and you can tell that from all if you look at customer reviews of people who has Teslas, they talk all about that. So I'm expecting things to get again, those edge case scenarios, those funky neighborhoods or those weird roundabouts. I would say that it's going to get a lot better over the course of a year from now, but it's so exciting that we can now start that countdown. It's not some future many years from now. It's going to be, no, it's starting now, and then as the next year goes by, it's going to get a lot better and be done. It's going to be real nice in a year. We'll see what the regulators do. A lot of edge case scenarios to work out. Self-driving, thing to realize with self-driving, it's and Elon has talked about this. I'll misquote him terribly. So the kind of thing he said was basically that self-driving, for like 95% of it, is relatively easy. It's all the same, and every intersection is almost identical. But there's those 5% of intersections that are not at all similar at all, or really, really funky. And I'm sure you can imagine. Look at a five-way stop. I can't even handle a five-way stop. They're not very common, but these cars are gonna have to be able to handle that. And it looks like they're going to start working out those edge case scenarios. Again, expect that to take about a year to get fully integrated and to get a lot better, similar to how their highway self-driving did. They rolled out a beta, and then it took about a year for that beta to improve automatically through updates. Another really, really exciting thing, I think this is a huge watershed moment. So the battery costs for the M3s, those are going to be coming for the Model 3s. Those are going to be coming massively down, as much as 56% reduction. This is because they're finally going to start integrating these new batteries, and this is going to be crazy. So just to give you a little analogy to put this in perspective, getting new batteries for your Tesla is kind of price range, and like, you would think of it similar to rebuilding an engine, or getting your head gasket blown, and you have to rebuild your engine. That's the most expensive thing that can happen to your guzzling car. The equivalent to that in the electric world would be, eventually you might have to replace your batteries. Batteries, just like your cell phone, degrade over time. They don't charge up to the same amount. So when that eventually happens, this is like hearing your rebuild of an engine is getting 56% cheaper. That's crazy. It's going to hugely add to the long-term value of used Model 3s. The whole line, all their used cars. It's going to extremely add to that value of the used vehicles, because replacing that battery, instead of being, right now it's around $7,000, 56% cheaper. So that's going to be around 3,000 to 3,500. We'll see what the numbers end up being. Inflation will affect that. But that's very, very exciting that it's going to be dropping by over 50%. Your biggest cost item that you have to worry about on long-term maintenance just got 50% cheaper. That is huge. And one of the things that this makes possible is they also announced that they're going to be releasing a $25,000 car. Now, those specific numbers don't matter. The exciting thing that relates to is just by comparison, a Honda Civic, brand new 2021, starts, baseline, starts at $22K. Baseline Tesla, soon to be $25K. They're competing on these super cheap cars. The cheapest car, used car, like if I were to go buy myself a car, I would want to be getting a used car. It would have to be something that really is efficient for that, cheap parts, like one of the best cars I would want to pick would be a Honda Civic, because it's going to last forever, it's going to be cheap to repair, and there are cheaper cars out there in theory, but like long term they're not actually cheaper. They're going to cost you more long term. So they're hitting that price point of the best, cheapest bargain market cars on the market. They're hitting that same price point, and that is huge. They're no longer a luxury car maker. They are now, if you want to save and be the most, cutting the budget as much as possible, you're still going to buy a Tesla. Even if you want to go as cheap as possible and buy the cheapest car out there, the cheapest used car out there, they're hitting that price point, and that is incredible. Which we'll see what ends up happening. But I'll tell you one thing: in 6 years from now, my preferred car choice won't be a Honda Civic no more. It'll be a used Tesla. Right now, it's a used Honda Civic. I would love to have that, but in 6 years, it's going to be a used Tesla that I'll want to have. So it's incredibly awesome. They're finally hitting those price points, the price points of the cheapest cars on the market. Cheapest being the best deal ones on the market. There are cheaper cars, but they're crap. So another really exciting thing to look into is they talked about their Cybertruck. They got 600,000 pre-orders for the Cybertruck. And I know not all those orders are going to go through, but you should count them all, because even though some people will drop off, once it actually becomes a reality, real thing, other people are going to want to order. So that number is going to go up, not down. When people decide not to do their deposits, there's going to be more demand for people that do want the car. So that 600,000 is going up, not down. So count those deposits, all of them. And more to that fact, the Austin factory is going to be the one producing those cars. The Cybertrucks. For now, later on, we're going to be looking at how the Austin factory is going to scale to about 500,000 cars. I'm not sure what the split is going to be between like Model 3s and Model S's and Cybertrucks or all that mess. We'll see. But in the near future, the Austin factory will be producing 300K Cybertrucks. So we got 2 years worth of built-up demand. If you look back to earlier when the Model 3 was going through this similar type of situation, they had a whole bunch of pre-orders for that. I think they had either 2 or 3 years worth of pre-orders based on their production for the Model 3. And you can see how now it has been a couple years since the Model 3 came out, and there is still more demand than can be met by production. Even though his production figures have been going up by 50% last year, production figures going up by 30 to 40% this year, they still will not be able to meet demand, even with insane exponential growth. Similar things going to happen with the Cybertruck, potentially for a long time. I don't know, 5 years. I don't know. It's going to be a long time before they will be able to produce to the setting of demand. We'll take a look more at that though. But just for basis comparison, is that Toyota produced 10.7 million cars in the year 2019. Tesla produced 367,500 cars in 2019. But my point is that, just a quick point to think of it, that whatever saturation of the market is at, I don't think it's below Toyota. Like, at the very least, Tesla is going to be on par with popularity as Tesla and Toyota. I mean, so yeah, demand for Tesla is at least 10 million, and they're only producing 360,000. So we got a lot of growth before we have to worry about demand and question where that's at. I don't want to pick those numbers, but I just want to say we can 10x, and we still don't even have to worry about it. So, well, let's worry about that next decade. Demand is there. So another thing we're going to be talking about, talking about like Shanghai plant, really exciting about that. So Shanghai plant was originally only thought to be about 500,000 cars. Turns out it's going to be around 1 million cars. They were able to expand that. And there's another thing Elon talked about, his other factories in Fremont. I believe he talked about it a bit, about potentially later years being able to expand the property. He bought a lot of land, smaller factory that expands into a larger factory, expands into a larger factory. So looking at the numbers total, what he talked about at the announcement was he talked about 500,000 for the Fremont factory, and these are near-term goals. They're not currently what's being produced, but that's all based on factories he already has, mostly built. So this is not, I totally credit these numbers, even though we don't know exactly when this is going to happen. We don't have to assume anything amazing for these numbers to happen. It's already pretty much baked into the cake that he's going to be able to produce a total of 500,000 from the Fremont factory, 1 million from Shanghai, 500,000 from Austin, and 500,000 from Berlin. That's just with the currently planned expansions and the currently planned factories that are already mostly built, some of them already producing near those numbers. Berlin, for example, not quite producing at those. I don't even think Berlin is producing. I'd have to look it up. Point being that these are baked into the cake for the future, not now, but very reasonable to think that we're going to be getting to 2.5 million cars per year just based on the factories he already has. And that's not considering expansions later that he talked about being possible. And that's not considering more factories being built in the future, which will absolutely be done. One of the things he talked about in the meeting was that ideally he wants a bunch of little factories all over the place as close to the seller as possible. So expect there to be many more factories coming into production. Every year we're going to hear announcements about new factories going up all over the place. Not all of them will be as big as these. Some of them will probably be bigger. But expect probably things in the range of like 200,000 cars a year popping up all over the place. So a lot more factories to be built. But I think they're wanting to refine their strategy of how these factories are built. The machine that builds the machine, if you remember from a few years ago, Elon Musk talked a lot about this. The hardest thing is not the machine itself, it's the machine that builds the machine. And that the version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4 of the factory, each time you rebuild the factory and retool the factory, it's going to be more efficient, it's going to produce more cars. And that's even before you scale it bigger, which then will produce more cars. So a lot of exciting things that they're easily, I think it's very easy going to get to 2.5 million. We'll see how many years that takes. I don't know what he's predicted in a few years. I'm not even going to, you know Elon's quotes. He always says, oh, it's going to be 1 year or 2 years. We're going to get there. We'll see. But it's definitely baked into the cake that he's going to get there sooner than other people think, and probably later than he predicts. But that's Elon time. He always gets there, just a little bit later than he says, and still light years ahead of the rest of the industry and light years ahead of the critics. So I'm fine with Elon time. Elon time is fine because he still beats the rest of the industry and he still beats the critics. So it's okay that he doesn't always meet his own goals. You should have high aspirational goals, absolutely. Speaking of which, aspirational goals, he has a lot of goals for the gigawatt growth. We got 2022 looking at 100 gigawatt hours, hoping to, and that's not present, so we're just hoping that's going to get there. And 2030, 3,000 gigawatts. So 103,000. That in just 8 years. So that would be a 52.98% growth annually. 52.98. More Elon predictions. So I'm not sure if he'll be able to match that. But he will get somewhat close. We'll see what he gets, but it's very impressive. We've only seen the beginning of the curve. If you think Tesla's stock price has gone to the roof already, realize that it's gone to the roof based on cars. No one is really pricing in the effect of solar panels or the effect of all the battery packs. It's just like, yes, those are parts of the company, but like they aren't a large enough percentage of the revenue that no one is really at this time taking it seriously. That is going to dramatically change. And that is going to be a huge catalyst. I believe that Tesla, like its namesake, is actually not a car company. Everyone thinks it's a car company. It's not. It's an energy company. It's got solar. It's got cars that run off energy. It's got battery packs. There's been rumors about a plane. It's got both personal trucking and industrial trucking. This is an energy company. It is not a car company. Cars is a side business that Tesla started with. But one day it will be a side business and they will make a lot more money. They will make a lot more money from energy, and particularly scale. Like the energy market is bigger than the car market. There is endless amounts of scale they could go with energy. So that is extremely exciting. Let's look at a couple other things though. So just to put into some perspective, if we look at Toyota's market cap right now, Toyota, it's just another company to compare to. I could compare it to anyone, but I love Toyota, so that's why I compare. So we're looking at market cap of about around 186 billion. That's when I looked this up, so it's probably different now, but about 186 billion when I looked it up, comparatively to at the same time when I looked up Tesla to be 354 billion market cap. So we're looking that the market cap for Tesla is about twice Toyota. Okay, nothing wrong with that. But let's look into that. So currently Tesla is producing what did I say earlier? 367,500 cars in 2019 compared to Toyota's 10 million cars in 2019. So at what growth percentage, if we're looking to go out to year 2029, and the reason I picked 2029 is just a bunch of his predictions came out for 2029. We'll talk about that in a second. But I'm just looking, if we want to match Toyota's production, we would need, that would assume, if we wanted to do it by 2029, that would assume 40% annual growth rate, and that would get you to 10.6 versus 10.7. You're practically there. So that's doable based on last year's numbers or what he expects this year. It could be. Little thing about exponential growth, like for example, Elon's prediction for 2029, he has that at 20 million cars, which, oh my gosh, that sounds like so many, almost twice as many as, I mean, you need a 40% growth just to get you to 10.6 million. How does he get to 20 million? Well, interestingly, if you just do a 50% growth rather than a 40%, so just 10% more cars per year, you wouldn't think that doubles the amount of cars he produces, but it does. If you roll out 50% growth to 2029, that gets you to 21 million cars. So he has himself beat if he can average a 50% growth. On the flip side, if he averages a 40% growth, he barely gets halfway there. So 10% growth over the course of 9 years can account for double the growth. I know that's weird to think, but 10%, you have to think 9 years, 10%. Yeah, you can almost double your production if you can just do it a little bit better. So we will have to see. One of the things to look at would be for this year, for example, what it actually ends up being. He was saying anywhere from 30 to 40% growth. That's not enough. But you can make up for that in later years, and there are some later years that might be able to happen. In particular, next year, looking at the The Shanghai factory, it's nowhere near its full production capacity, but a lot of the hard annoying things are already done. Like, it's already producing cars, for example. They already got all the permits for expansion. They already got all the regulatory things they needed done. They already got that planned out. So I think Shanghai is gonna scale up really fast. Similar with Berlin, they aren't really producing cars at the moment, or maybe they are. Honestly, I haven't looked into it. But point is that that's going to scale up very quickly. If they wanted to build a whole new factory that they haven't announced yet, that would scale up slower. So I think we're going to do very well scaling up wise for the next couple years. But if he doesn't announce a new factory soon, then that growth rate could be stalled. So he needs to announce another factory soon. So be looking for that. Be looking for more announcements of new factories in new locations. If that continues to roll out quickly, then we got this. If he doesn't announce something past Berlin for another couple years, then there's no way he meets these targets. He has to announce another factory within the next couple years, preferably within less than a year. And we need another factory announced now. We'll see. And I think he will. If you look at the past few years, how often he builds a new factory, how often it gets announced, that is also growing exponentially. So I don't think that's out of the mark at all. So with all this in mind, what does that all mean? And what it will mean, I think, is that it means a lot of the hype. A lot of the people say that this price is justified, that you got to buy in, you don't miss out. And the reason they have a leg to stand on is, well, because of all this, exponentially, it's going to work. Now, let's go back to the comparison of Toyota. So a few things baked into the cake. So, assuming the 40% growth rate just to match Toyota, because 50% growth rate is a bit ridiculous. Let's be frank, even 40% growth rate is a bit ridiculous. But I like 40% growth rate because that takes us to match Toyota in 9 years, and it's not too crazy ridiculous. He's beat it, and he's been under it, and averaging 40, I think that can happen. At least till you get up to Toyota's size. Now, once you move past that, you run into some scaling problems. You wonder how much demand is there. I think there's more demand for Teslas than there are for Toyotas, but that's a debatable point that we'll have to get to and debate when we get there. We're not there yet, so when we get there, we'll debate it. So assuming we get to the size of Toyota in 2029, then the stock is still double price, which for a growth company, I would be fine with. Tesla's a growth company, Toyota is not a growth company, so paying double for it, that makes sense. But once it gets to that size, we don't know if it's a growth company anymore. At the moment, it's a growth company. When it gets that size, do I want to pay double for it? No. So the price you're paying today is assuming 9 years of 40% growth, and that it would still be a growth company after that. And I think both those cases are true, and that's why everyone's like, yeah, you still got to buy in. These are justified prices. Caveat. So here's the caveat that I've been holding off this whole time, and that is just that I think more opportunities will come up in the future. If you look at Tesla's recent prices before this, everyone's screaming like, oh yeah, these prices are just, it's going to the moon, keep on buying. A lot of those people bought in just recently. All the things that I just laid out here, these are all things that Elon has talked about for 5 years now. So why now? If you just look very recently on the graph, the Tesla stock has gone ballistic, and very recently. If all these things were true 5 years ago, and they were, Elon was talking about every single one of these things, why now? Why weren't you already invested? I was already invested. I sold my stuff too soon. There's another whole story about that. But point is that you could have all been bought in for the last, you have that span, the price ran up like 6 years ago, and then you have the span of time where it's flat relative, and then right before the recent craziness, it actually drops down. And during that down, there was so much fear. Everyone was talking about how it could go down or whatever. And then the price shoots to the sky, and now everyone's like, oh my gosh, they're going to go to the sky forever. You don't think you're falling prey to some emotional problems there? Why weren't you invested in the bottom? The experts were invested just like a year ago or a year and a half ago, not even that long ago, just a tiny bit ago. The stock price was cratering, a relatively all-time low based on what it had been in the last 5 years. That's when the experts got in. And now you have people calling themselves experts, justifying their position, and saying that they're really excited about Tesla at today's price. Where were they last year? Crickets. They all say they're justified. They all say that the company is going to go to the moon and that they always believed in it and it's going to expand forever. Where were they last year? So I think a lot of people are really onto the hype. They're justifying their position, and there is justification to be had. I'm just saying that the time to buy this stock, you missed it. And if you're getting FOMO at the moment, be like, oh, it's going to the sky, I have to buy in, you should have thought about that last year. There was, all these signs were still there. The growth rate per year, he had already, this battery company that this battery announcement is about, they had already purchased the company before. They already had the patents. You could look into those patents, and I knew, and that's why I owned the stock back then, because it was very obvious that this was going to happen. So if you're justifying the stock at today's value and you're loading up on more, and this is another thing, a lot of people, if you look at their buying patterns, even if they were invested back then, you'll see that their buying patterns increased massively. They bought more and more and more stock the higher it went up. If they were a true expert that really knew what was going on in this company, you don't increase your buys exponentially the further the price goes up. You're getting a worse and worse and worse and worse deal. You should have put your money in when the price was low. And just because the price is now currently skyrocketing, you missed out. That doesn't mean, oh, I gotta pile in before I miss out more. You already missed the boat. So you should have already been in. So now but what if it does keep going up forever? And because all these things are possible, that could still happen. So let's put this in different perspective. Let's say if we were already past the recession, like if the market was currently at its bottom, then I would say, yes, buy Tesla. Absolutely. This is not investment advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Please do your own research. I'm just saying opinion. Don't. Anyways, point being though, is that we're not at the beginning of a cycle. We're near the end of a cycle. So all I'm saying is that absolutely Tesla is a buy at this price, except the caveat of, could there potentially be an opportunity in the near future to buy it at a better price? And I think that opportunity is coming because we had a recent ballistic rise and we have the threat of a recession that we haven't gotten to yet. That recession will happen and eventually drag the price down to a more appropriate buy level. We will then, if you look back just to press the stock, you had a massive run up in, I need to look this up before I just talk out of my ass. So you had a massive run up. Tesla stock. Okay, here we go. On the max chart. I know you can't see it because I don't want to edit. I'm lazy. So if you look at this chart, you'll look at this yourself. Just go to Google. It's really easy to look at. The recent run-up and craziness all started around October, November 2019. Wow, just about a year ago, like I was saying earlier. So I guess I knew what I was talking about. What do you know? The lowest price around that time, and as I said, it went flat for a period of years, and then you had a low dip, and that would have been the expert time to buy. I bought some then, not nearly enough. I wish I'd bought a lot more, but we'll get into that. But that would have been the time to buy around May 2019. Before that, you have a period of 5 years from May 2014 to that 2019. The stock was incredibly flat. So I would say that it was a bad time to buy in May 2014 because it had just recently ran up. It started its run up in May 2013. It took about a year for that run up to happen. And then that price was not yet justified. You should have bought before that run up and then sold then, and then the stock market stays flat for a prolonged period of time. Now it's time to buy again. Around the time that that dip starts happening, if you had been cost averaging in over that entire flat time, when that dip happens, then you start going up to these ballistic highs. That would have been the proper way to do it. If you're now jumping in and you're now justifying your position and you're now like, well, no, I win the argument because of all these facts. If you were a true expert and you really knew all these things, you would have gotten in just 1 year ago. It wasn't 3 years ago. The stock market has the price has literally like at that time, and we don't go to the bottom. Let's just say that the peak price back in 2018, November 2018, almost 2019. So the peak price just a couple of years ago was 70. And now it's 380 as of today when I'm looking at it at this moment. So we went up there that's ridiculous. So just know when you really, you should have the perspective to know. A lot of people are justifying their position saying that Tesla's gonna make up this price, that it's worth even 4 times this price. And to all of them I say, I agree. It is. I would pay 4 times the current price for Tesla. Except that was all true a year ago. And you should have put your money in then. I think there will be more opportunities. This stock, I think just like last time when it had a rise and then it went flat for about 5 years, I think similarly, this ballistic rise has just now happened. It's done. You missed the boat. And I would predict that the stock is either going to go flat for a number of years, giving you an opportunity to dollar cost average in before the eventual later ballistic rise happens all over again. Or even better, if we go into recession, then we could have a cratering price, which could allow even better opportunities. Either way, what I would suggest is not non-financial advice, do your own thing, but what I'm looking to do is to, over the next 5 years, I will buy Tesla stock. Slowly, not putting all my capital in at once, but over the next 5 years, I will increase my buys. Like I may start at $10 a month this month, and then next year I'll do $20 a month or something like that, to where as time goes on, I'll increase my buys and I will have cash on the side in case the price craters. That will be exciting, and then I'll want to massively increase my buy. But still in that same scenario, you'll never be lucky enough to pick the bottom. So don't even try. Just when the price starts cratering, increase your buy. It craters more, increase your buy more. When it craters even more than that, keep increasing your buy. When the price goes down, that's when you increase your buy. All these other people, they talk, the stock is skyrocketing to the roof, and they're increasing their capital. That's not the way you should. If you truly believe in a company, then the stock price going down should be when you invest more. But so many people FOMO'd and sold out then. Don't get caught in the FOMO. Don't buy a stock just because it has recently risen. You must acceptance. I missed this boat, and I am okay with that. And from that perspective, you can then make a wise decision. If you want to start putting in capital in Tesla, sure. Just small amounts, giving you an average so that if the price goes down, you will be able to put more in and put yourself at an even better position. So that's my take on it. We'll see what happens. Follow me on TikTok and here, and we'll see what happens. I'll let you know what I do with the stock. I haven't yet started to purchase any Tesla. I'm just kind of waiting for some of this volatility to work itself out and to see if this is really the price we're going to be at. It might be, so you can go ahead and start buying if you want to, but I'm just waiting a little bit longer, but then I will start dollar cost averaging in, but still holding most of my capital on the side for those dips coming up when we see the pressure. If you want to know more about the pressure of the recession coming up, my last video talks a lot about that, where we go into all the details of the pressure of the recession. We go into the details of the pressure of the election coming up, the second wave, all those things that are going to conflict and possibly bring some uncertainty into the market. Right now, everyone is very certain about the trajectory of Tesla. There is not enough caution and uncertainty for the times that we are currently in. The recession has not hit the market yet. If you look simply back at year 2000 or the year 2008, you'll see there's a little bit of bumps right at the top right before we had our crash, and those bumps look very similar to what we're currently going through. But realistic crash, that hasn't happened. You want the one that happened like 6 months ago or whatever, the really, really big one that everyone freaked out, that was not a crash. That was a mild dip correction. That's a bump. If you look back to the year 2008 or the year 2000, those crashes, those bumps were about the same size. That what we had a few months ago. I bought oil when the oil was negative, and I made a ton of money off the last crash. It was great, but it was not the real crash. It was just a mild correction, very mild thing. We still have much more uncertainty yet to come that has not been priced into the market. So stay tuned, stay following, and I'll let you know what my plans are as we move forward.